There is no peace amongst the stars. There is only war.
Hi, I'm Andy Brown from GamesRadar, and today I am with Andy and Simon. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm another Andy Hall. I am a narrative guy for the project and kind of a professional geek, the lore master on our project.
I don't have quite so lofty a title. My name's Simon Mann. I'm a campaign product owner.
Amazing. Yeah, features editor sounds very boring now, but okay. So jumping right into like the nerdy details of it, I think everyone thought that 40k might be the next step on from fantasy for a while, but the biggest thing I've seen people sort of be like worried about is how that's going to translate into a more sort of potentially ranged heavy sort of battle system. Can you talk me through a little bit about how that's going to work and sort of how you've stayed true to the sort of formula from Total War?
Yeah, so I think primarily you have to remember a lot of our things are built on ranged combat. It's not a brand new thing for the franchise. And actually, when you look at the kind of IP itself with Warhammer 40,000, it's not just ranged as well. It's a mixture, right? You've got these kind of strong melee characters with powerful weaponry like charging in, but you do also have that ranged combat side as well. So with that, we've done an awful lot of improvements to our overall battle engine, trying to kind of bring it up to that. We have elements such as cover and things like that. Lots of those things you would expect from a kind of ranged combat style game. And all of those are used by your kind of various units and kind of warriors to actually kind of gain that control and power on the battlefield, while these kind of more melee-focused characters are doing their thing and smashing heads, basically.
I think, yeah, building destruction, I think people are going to be really kind of inspired by. And it's not just because blowing up buildings is cool, and it really is, and especially when you send the drop pods down to do it, but then that debris will then turn into like cover zones for you. And as Simon said, like Space Marines, yeah, they're definitely skilled with bolter guns, but actually they're kind of like walking tanks. And once you throw them into combat, they will certainly make their mark.
If what I'm picturing maybe like is like that sort of, I think Warhammer 3 already does quite well with that hybrid style units. Is that something where you've sort of gained that experience and you've sort of built upon in 40k?
Yeah, so look, a lot of the units, as we've always done, can fight in both melee and ranged. One of the lovely things we've got now is we have kind of more mixed unit styles, so a bit like you'd expect on the kind of tabletop game. Like a unit of your warriors isn't just made up of one unit type, right? It's not kind of the same person. They've got different specialists, different weapon styles. If you play the tabletop, obviously, a sergeant within an intercessor squad, they're armed with a chain sword and a bolt pistol, right? Like they are both good in melee and ranged, and they kind of fill that. So not even just from the point of view of this unit is good in melee or range, like Seaguard or something like that. Actually, individuals within those units are also excelling at certain areas. And obviously with kind of the elements of customization we're going to bring in, like you can kind of tweak that and cater that to your own kind of personal taste, much like, I'll say, you would if you were a hobbyist as well.
So that customization, that's something that a lot of people ask for on the fantasy side. But I think even then they're going to be quite surprised at how much is actually in 40k, not just visually, but like you said, being able to mix and match weapons. What was the philosophy behind going for that, like, and really doubling down on it?
I think because we're bringing in Space Marines quite early, and one of the kind of the fantasies for especially Space Marine players is I'm going to want to design my chapter, and it's almost because we didn't quite get to it with Warhammer. We kind of went all out with this one. And it really is a kind of next level, probably between any game for Warhammer that we've seen. I mean, a kind of a customization guru, the one he was showing me just the other day that you can customize the fingers on the Space Marines. So that's kind of the level of granularity we're going to go with this. So players can like start with their chapter, and obviously all the factions are going to have that to an extent, but I think the Space Marines are really going to be we're going to see some great looking Space Marine chapters out there. Yeah. I can't wait. I'm already planning mine in my head now.
But I think that was the thing is, even with Warhammer, we really wanted to do customization, as you said.
Yeah.
But we kind of started this project with, okay, we wanted to do it but didn't. We're going to start with the customization because we want this to be a game where you express yourself. Yeah. And it's not about you play as this preset faction, that's what you get. everything you're customizing isn't just aesthetic, it's mechanical as well, right? As I said, you're customizing how your kind of soldiers fight, you're customizing how your faction plays, you're customizing every single element of this, and it's really going to like appeal to those players who love kind of tinkering and like tweaking the stuff and like constantly optimizing and improving things to make their ultimate faction. We really hope people start sharing as well, right? You know, see what each other's doing, see how they've made it. Like, it's really exciting. And even in the office, we've got people making their own factions. Every now and then we have to clear the save data because obviously we're in development, and everyone gets very sad because they're the kind of favourite.
There's lots of screenshots going around. I think it's also important to say for the lore fiends out there, you will be able to play as your preferred codex chapter if that's the way you want to go. And again, same with like the Orcs and the Eldari and all the other factions that we will eventually get to.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is with this, we know that lots of players are coming from lots of different directions to this kind of game, and obviously to the IP itself. Not everyone's already into Warhammer 40,000. We kind of want to cater for everyone and allow you, once again, to express yourself, but also play the way you want to be playing this game.
So you mentioned those first 4 factions as sort of like a building point for the rest of the game to follow. And I think that says a lot compared to the fantasy one, which I think the popularity of it took everyone by surprise. I was just speaking to the engine team and they were not expecting to have to make the engine work for another decade. But how have you started 40k with that longevity in mind?
Well, we have a new engine, don't we?
Yes. So, like, primarily, we've recognised now, like, not that Warhammer was ever an accident. We knew it was something we wanted to go all in on and make everything with. But I think what we learned is a lot about making a game that has that kind of length of kind of tail to it. So we kind of started this with going, right, we need to rework a lot of things. A lot of systems got more and more difficult to kind of maintain and upkeep. And the requirements got big because we need to do all these kind of amazing outworldly factions. So we kind of, went, okay, we need to start again. We need to build something that will support us for that length of time. And we need to make a kind of gameplay set of systems that we can build on, we can extend, we can listen to what players are after and actually start to build something that is exactly what they want, right? To make the true fantasy of Warhammer 40,000 into kind of Total War itself. So that was a big element of it, is we really wanted to make sure that we can deliver that game first. That was our kind of foundation on it. But I think the next thing is, you know, deciding who we can do now, who we're going to do in the future. Obviously, as you say, we picked the 4 factions, right? We've got Space Marines, Astra Militarum, Orcs, and Eldari. They are like our core start, right? Like they're the ones we want to begin with. But over time, we are going to deliver the other factions, right? We are going to deliver more of those different kind of gameplay styles and different experiences that you'll play with, because they're all going to play very differently, because the engine's given us a lot of power now to make the factions even more diverse than they previously were.
Yeah, I remember being interviewed for Warhammer, the first game, way back when. Yeah, I've been here 10 years now. And there was almost some skepticism we would get to do the whole thing. In a way, I think we've got a track record. We've proven we can take the whole of a Warhammer franchise and effectively bring it to screen. And that's certainly our ambition with this game.
And I mean, it feels very similar in tone when fantasy was first revealed, and everyone just before that was like, how a flying unit's going to work, how's magic going to work, things like that. Like, CA was super confident from the start about that. Have you got that same level of confidence now that this, I guess, just works?
I think we do now. It's all working.
Oh, there you go. That'll do it.
And there, but like, you know, I remember the first time seeing a dreadnought rampaging across a battlefield, or like even some of the larger units that we have, like, you know, there was a lot of like, how do we do this? How do we actually achieve something so otherwise? We've never done anything as big as like a Stomper or something. Like, how do we do it? But I mean, honestly, everyone's been absolutely amazing pulling together, going, right, it's not just like we have to do this because we're told to. We're doing it because you got to do it, right? Like, you can't make this IP without making these specific unit types. So we have all of that working. We have jumpers with jetpacks, right? We have kind of standard infantry. We have vehicles. We have walkers. Like, all those things, you know, partly hopefully enabled by the new engine, but those things are working. They're there and available, and you're customizing those even further, right? Changing out their weapon loadouts and stuff. Like, it's been quite amazing to see it. And as you say, I think we were confident in doing it, but like seeing it come to life is something like totally different, I think.
Yeah, we're at the stage of the project where we're starting to, you know, bring in like the VO and the Audible, and we're polishing our assets. And so when you start seeing it like that, and me and Simon have kind of been in the trenches on this project for a good few years now. So now we're starting to see these final kind of assets in that finaling phase going in. It does go, oh my God, this is 40k. being able to bring in like an orbital lance strike onto a stomper, it warms the cockles, to use the British phrase.
I think one thing that I'm really interested in as well is how the campaign is going to work, because I think a lot of expectations were that maybe there would be a system built to sort of give everyone a reason to be fighting over one planet, one traditional map, but actually you've gone the other way, and like you were saying about things that you feel like you have to do in 40k, I think getting the scale of that is incredible. So like, can you talk to me a little bit about why you did decide to sort of spread out and not just set everything on one planet?
Well, I'm going to let Simon talk a lot about this in a minute, because Simon's been working on that. But I think you said it there, scale was important, and 40k is about scale. It's never just been set on one planet. I mean, that's to say there are other games that do that, but Total War, we wanted to kind of open up the galaxy. So that was kind of always our agenda from the start. How we actually do implement that, I'll hand over to Simon to talk about the difficult bit.
So yeah, like I think the core thing, we had this idea that when you look at the kind of tabletop game, it's very much focused on small kind of sorties around kind of individual locations on planet. Similar. That's freaking cool. Like, we love that kind of detail and attention that you get, and obviously that ties very well into Total War's battles, right, which are kind of a very similar theme. And then we kind of looked up a step and went, well, actually, the campaign is what provides the context to those battles, right? If you were playing like a crusade, for example, on the tabletop, like, is giving you a reason why you're here, why you're doing it. It's giving you a meaningful outcome for having achieved those things. So we went, well, actually, we need multiple places on the planet. So you're fighting all these battles, and obviously planets are going to be a core of your kind of economic gameplay as well, right? Like, different regions you own will give you different bonuses and buffs that improve your overall economy. Standard thing, more units, more soldiers, bigger battles, kind of more. But then we kind of went, actually, if you look at the kind of stories that come out of this world, like if you look at kind of the Black Library and things like that, it's very rarely in one place. It's not always on one planet. Quite often it's very interstellar. This is a game in space, right? Like, so well, actually, what if we did the whole system, right? Like, what if we took an entire solar system and it's that conflict that's raging across it, right? And you're fighting across multiple planets, multiple front lines. You've got these big fleets kind of moving between them, ferrying troops, engaging in battles against one another. Like, all these things that are part of kind of the IP. But really, this is an uncaring universe, right? This is one that really, honestly, that little battle means nothing to the grand scheme of things. So we went, well, let's take that a layer up. Let's go even further, and let's say this place you were fighting, this individual location, this flashpoint, right? Like, this vital battle that needed to be won. This is part of a grander kind of thing going on, a grander campaign that is occurring. So we're also now taking to the kind of galactic level and saying, well, yeah, okay, you won that campaign. Well done. Look, this is now your territory. You own this, but there are more campaigns to fight, right? There are bigger stakes at play here than just a single kind of campaign or battle to play through, and give you that real sense of this is galactic, right? Like, the IP is so good at showing you that kind of grand scale to the minutiae that we felt like we had to do that. That's the only way we could really be authentic to the setting itself. So you have all of those things, and every campaign you play, there is a meaning to it, right? Like, there is a bigger context. It's not just, I've won the campaign, that was fun. It's, I've won the campaign, we have this territory, we've conquered this location. We are now able to push further into this kind of area of the galaxy and play through that way. So we really think it adds an awful lot of extra kind of feeling, right? And kind of internal narrative for you as a player to try these things out.
I think on a practical level as well, kind of, as Simon says, pulling out even further, it allows the player to kind of pick and choose campaigns in a way that also, we're being respectful of their time. A Total War campaign traditionally is it's a big time sink. You're starting, and you can obviously play over several sessions, but here we've thought about there's going to be big campaigns that do just that. If you want to shut yourself away for the weekend and play a massive campaign, or if you've got an evening, you can play one of the smaller campaigns and our flashpoint system, and that will have an effect in the theatre too.
And you can even just play battles if you wish.
That's right.
Even on that area, there are these kind of strike battles, these very vital conflicts you need to win, where you can just send in your customized troops. I do love customization. But send in your customized troops and just fight a battle if you want. Like, if you're that sort of person who's only got a short amount of time to play, like, we're here for you. We've got something that you can do.
And because you both touched on this, the narrative side of things, I think something that Total War has dabbled in for quite a while is trying to find that right balance between creating a narrative to thread through that sandbox. How have you approached that here? Is there, like, does each faction have a sort of one specific story to follow, or is it, like you said, like a much bigger story than that?
So we have these big areas. They're still in the galactic context, still pinpricks in the firmament, but that we have these crusade theatres, and they will kind of drive that narrative. So what is going on here? Why are these forces here? And what's in store for the player if he continues that? So it also allows us kind of, it doesn't matter which faction you are, because you'll have a role. You know, everyone sees themselves as a protagonist in their story, and that's going to be the same whether you're like Eldari or Space Marines. You will have a role, and it's within the context of that crusade theatre, who's winning, who's not, that will kind of slowly kind of reveal what the narrative of that is as well. We have got a kind of a more tightly focused onboarding narrative, much like we did with Warhammer 3. Again, we're currently developing, and that's actually going to feed into the canon of 40k. So we've got something for everyone with that.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, I think you touched on it when you were speaking, right? It's that idea that you're kind of picking the narratives that you want to follow, like the threads that you wish to unravel. Like certain campaigns, they're all going to have a kind of scenario, a setting, right? Like, why are you going there? What is your objective? Yeah. And you're exploring that and trying to defeat that. And all throughout, you know, space is a terrifying thing in this kind of far-flung future. Like, there are kind of space hulks and wrecks and abandoned stations and things. There are places that you can go and explore and kind of gain that window into the universe, right? That I think Total War's always been great at doing, which is showing you, yeah, okay, there's strategy here, there's important things to do, but we also try and show you that window underneath that, right? Like the actual people and the reality of this situation. So we've got all of those kind of elements kind of working together.
I mean, touching on that a little bit more, 40k, there's so many like books and games that sort of try and show different facets of like the universe. Are there any other 40k games or Black Library books or anything that you've looked to in sort of seeing how they did the, let's say, like scale or units or something like that? Like, what have your inspirations been, if any?
I mean, the source books are kind of always our foundational stepping stone. And you know, we're in a fortunate position where we have very close ties with the guys at Games Workshop, and that's certainly continued. Black Library books, certainly. I have a massive database of all like the Black Library books and some, you know, familiar tropes that we can pluck and use. So yeah, I would say it's the 40k milieu as a, rather than anything specific or any specific game. It was kind of, you know, almost like what we did with Warhammer. What happens if we take Total War and mix it with Warhammer? And that's pretty much what we're doing this time as well.
Yeah, my Audible library is quite one-dimensional at the moment. It is largely Black Library books all the way up and down. I'll send you a book list afterwards. But yes, I think the other thing as well is, like, as a group, we are very passionate about Warhammer 40,000. Like, there are tables set up downstairs. There's people kind of playing away. Like, almost everyone's got an army. We've got a load of display cases with units that everyone's painted. Like, we're really, really into this as well. Like, and I think as part of that, Games Workshop have been an amazing partner, because obviously we've got the enthusiasm and the excitement, and so many people who know so much of the lore. They've been there to really help us kind of finesse that and turn that into something that's really, really accurate and punchy and really kind of strong hitting. I mean, you know almost everything, I always feel. But I think that's the thing is we've really, really got a kind of internal burning passion to, like, do this justice and make it amazing and really be kind of like the seminal Warhammer 40,000 game from the perspective of showing every part of that world. Like, you talked about the narrative and people's kind of attempts. Like, we kind of want to be that game that tries to do all of it. We're very greedy in some regards, but we do want to try and kind of give you that entire scope of this kind of universe.
I mean, like, all the games do a magnifying glass in a certain aspect, pretty much like what you said. And just like what Simon says, we're not the magnifying glass, we're the car windscreen. To you torture an analogy there. Yeah, we're trying to bring it all and be that kind of seminal digital version of Warhammer 40,000.
I think one thing that I'm quite interested in on the destruction side of things is that over the course of Total War, cities have been quite a tricky one to get right, I think, between entries. How have you approached Warhammer 40k, which has, I guess, the most exaggerated, impossible cities out of most settings out there? Like, how have you approached handling those?
Well, I kept saying to Rob, our art director, make the cities bigger, make them reach into the atmosphere, certainly on that campaign level. But we've got a whole selection of battle maps that look absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so like across the campaigns, because I'll begin at that. Like across the campaigns, you're going to be fighting on multiple different planets, right? Like multiple different types, from kind of arid wastelands to kind of like polluted hive cities that are there. And, you know, those hive cities are part of the planets, right? They are locations and regions that you can capture and take. Ownership is really good for you, especially if you're the Imperium, but those turn into the battlefields, right? If you're fighting a battle in a hive city, you will fight in a hive city. As you said, they reach towards the sky, right? Like, and they reach down into the depths in some cases as well. Like, they are big, huge edifices. They're what we're currently calling kind of key regions, right? They are like vital points of infrastructure on a planet. They're the most important things to own. They are kind of seminal, important battles. They are going to be highly defended, difficult to take, but also highly impressive when you get there, right? Like, so I think we've been able to kind of unleash ourselves a little bit. I know the environment artists have, like, to show something totally scale-wise like nothing you've ever seen before in a Total War.
I think one thing that was mentioned earlier in a previous interview was that there's a lot more verticality than teams have been experiencing working with before. So, like, I guess when I think of verticality in Total War, I think one army at the top of a hill, whereas maybe in hive cities, like you were saying there, it could be a little bit more dramatic. How have you approached sort of getting into that frontier of Total War, which feels like quite a new one?
I think we're doing a lot with the negative spaces on the battlefield. So, you know, if you're crossing a bridge, it's not just like a shallow river underneath. You see a chasm going into the heart of the planet. And obviously our outfields are looking tremendous. You know, again, you're seeing like cathedrals that reach into the sky, no matter how high you point the camera upwards. And also in the outfields, we have these kind of escalation objectives that you need to control via kind of capture points in the battlefields, and then you'll towards the end of the battle, you'll be able to capture them, and you'll see them kind of operate, and that has a kind of a soft effect in the campaign itself.
Yeah, and I think regarding the capture points, it's actually offered us a really interesting opportunity. We've not really done capture points since, I think, kind of Shogun 2 with a little kind of dip into Warhammer and Warhammer Fantasy, but the ability to do it has allowed us to kind of work the space around those, right? We know where those key conflict points are going to be within all the maps, so we've been able to build scenarios around, and you've got a mixture of kind of very natural kind of undulation, I guess, of like kind of high cliffs, low valleys, but you've also then got the hive cities, right, which are a lot more organized, much closer to probably our kind of settlement battles past, where we've actually been able to build things. It's about kind of height and ramps, and obviously with new unit types, we've got new traversers as well, right? Like we have assault intercessors, right, who you can upgrade to have jetpacks. That changes the game, right? It's not just now where you've got to walk down the path to get there. You can jump across the path. You can change the space, right? And we've actually worked very hard to make sure that every single space is designed around these multiple different traversal types. So there's always an interesting challenge and interesting opportunities to kind of play with it.
Amazing. That sounds fantastic. And I guess as my last question, just to bridge the gap between fantasy and 40k now, what would you say your biggest learnings as developers have been over the last few years, I suppose, focused primarily on the fantasy side? And like, where have you been able to bake those learnings into 40k from quite an early development standpoint?
I think the biggest one is one I touched on towards the start as we were discussing, right, which is we knew Warhammer Fantasy was going to be big because we were working on it and we thought it was really cool. What I think we knew is we wanted to get bigger and add more facts as we go. I don't think we kind of mentally prepared ourselves for it in the way we could. I think the Warhammer DLC team have done amazing stuff. They've really brought that universe to life in a way. In some regards, working on the first Warhammer, I don't know if we achieved quite as well. I think it's gone from strength to strength. But I think us building around that to start, even from the perspective of being able to bring all that content in, be able to manage that sheer amount of content that we need to do, I think we learned a lot about how do we make a game that's going to have that much in it, right? Like, 'cause there is so much and it's all unique and different. And you've got unique animation rigs and models and maps and events and so many bits coming in that, you know, sometimes it's hard to manage that amount of stuff. So we've started with that in mind as we began, right? Which is, we're going to build it. So let's make sure that whatever we put in is ready to be built upon.
I think the main takeaway for me, again, like Simon worked on the first one, was actually the asynchronous design. It's strange to imagine now, but I remember even at the time in the studio, there were people were asking if we should do this. Should we give the vampire counts ranged combat, even though they don't have them in the army book. But how would that happen in the game? And a game director at the time, Ian, also working on this project, was very adamant that we do that. And now we thought he's been quite dynamic and maverick by like giving the dwarfs, the Book of Grudges mechanic or the Empire offices. And we were like, oh my god, this is crazy town. But by the standards of Warhammer 10 years later, they seem quite tame now. So to kind of bridge to your question, I think, from the start, we wanted kind of asynchronous design. Space Marines shouldn't act like Astra Militarum. Eldari certainly shouldn't act like any other faction. They have different agendas, different wants, different styles. So I think that's where we're starting, and I think we'll carry on from there.
I think that's a good point, actually, because, when you play Warhammer Fantasy, every faction you play is different. Like, I really love Scarbrand, right? Because he's not about building strong economies and powering up from that. He's about fighting battles and winning, building stronger armies, more bloodletters, please. And I really like that side of it, but he's so different to everything else, to every other faction. If you play as Kislev, right, there is a lot more of this kind of building and surviving aspect to it. And I think with that asymmetry between all the different factions, actually, you're going to get multiple games you can play almost, right? Like, yeah, same world, same rules, same universe, but the way you play with those rules, your interaction is going to change a lot depending on who you're going with.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for your time.